Welcome to Honeybee Watch Symposia series. This is our third event and the last of 2023. I'm Steve Rogenstein. I'm your host and the behind-the-scenes producer and Honeybee Watch's project director. And I'm joined by Arrigo Moro, who is our science director. And today we'll hear from 4 experts who will share their research projects and experiences with free-living bees. And today in particular, we're going to talk about wild, a term that is laden with connotations and controversy. So the purpose of the Symposia series is manyfold. As I said, it's an international coalition. What we're trying to do is bring experts together to introduce them to one another, to start and spark dialogue, to introduce you to them and their projects, and you to one another. It's also a platform whereby we can hear about different experiences and perspectives related to free-living colonies and to discuss individual issues. So in the past, we spoke about monitoring. In September, we also talked about data sharing and data rights. And today, we're going to talk about wild. So today's title is Wild, Free-Living, Feral, Definitions for Consistency. And each of these terms has sparked numerous discussions, and we have not come to any clear conclusions. And so in this dialogue today, we really wanted to get to the heart of what is wild. It seems easy enough, but unfortunately it isn't. Today we'll attempt to unravel why and maybe work towards a clearer understanding and a clearer usage of this term. And through a couple of brief illustrations in no particular order, I'm hoping to introduce the complexity and some of the controversies. So to begin, we interchange wild living with free living. Some people use one of the terms and the other. They're interchangeable as we see it, but these are distinct from feral. So feral often refers to escapees. But in this context, if a swarm from a managed apiary settles into a tree cavity, for instance, while we acknowledge that it's a feral colony, until when is it? Does it ever revert back to being in a wild state? And who defines this process? And this is something that we have discussed interminably and have not really come to any kind of resolution. Additionally, as I said, we've been working with IUCN. And in 2014, they gave the data deficient label to Apis mellifera. And the reason was because there were complications between wild and domesticated. And, IUCN, they're working with animals across the globe. And when you're talking about a whale or a rhinoceros, yes, if seen in nature, it's wild. But in the case of honeybees, many view them as a species that's incapable of surviving without human interventions. And obviously we challenge that. You can't control their reproduction. You can't control what they feed on or where they forage. And so this dichotomy of wild versus domesticated doesn't quite apply to Apis mellifera. Some people instead use managed as the opposite to wild, but again, we don't have a universally accepted definition here. So going back to wild, are we talking about a colony on an individual basis? Is it an entire population? And if we're talking about wild populations, are these self-sustaining, whereby they're isolated from managed hives that could cast swarms and possibly dilute genetics? And then what happens when a wild population exists, but not in its original geographic range? Is this considered wild also? Something else? Does it deserve protection? And then in common parlance, wild bees these days is often associated with solitary bees. And the question is, can honeybees be wild too, or do they beg a new descriptor? So this is just a couple of examples of topics that we've been pondering at Honeybee Watch. And while many have addressed these, for instance, Vincent Ambouy, I don't know if he's here today, or Francis Cordelot, they're drafting a glossary of terms, but there are no universal answers yet. And obviously within science, it's important for us to come to consensus so that we have consistent definitions, to know that we're talking about the same concepts and that population characteristics specifically are referred to universally. So that's a lot to process, but those are kind of the topics that we're going to discuss today. I could go on, but we're really here for our guests. I'm going to jump ahead to Fabrice. If you can unmute yourself and get ready. We're going to move to France. He's working in Paris at the Laboratory of Evolution, Genome, Behavior, and Ecology at University of Saclay. He also works at the IRD, Institute for Development Research. Fabrice has published so many articles, too many to mention here, but they touch upon as many far-ranging topics as pollination, invasive species, food security, citizen science, science communication, and of course, free-living honeybees. He's been monitoring for free-living honeybees in, I think, 4 nature preserves throughout France. He's one of the original members of Honeybee Watch, an assessor on our work with IUCN. He's co-authored papers with Patrick and Benjamin as well, and has done field studies in South America in conjunction with Solatina. So he's got a lot of experience, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you for the invitation to talk about this topic. It's not my main topic, working with wild living honeybees. I'm more ecologist, so I started working with bees in general. And the first things when we are doing research with bees, it's okay. We know that these bees are declining. So here you have what we know about the decline of wild pollinators and especially wild bees. So what we call wild is this diversity of 20,000 species worldwide, and each picture with the red dots, the red color, it's a decline of the population. So we know that the wild bees, diversity of wild bees is declining. What we know also on the other side is that the mortality of managed honeybees is increasing. So here you have a map with also colors with red colors means that the mortality of this managed colonies is high, about half of the livestock. So it's what we know right now. Wild bees are the diversity of wild bees is declining, but also the mortality of managed honeybees is increasing. And so it's alarming. A lot of research is working on that. And now we have kind of consensus about the mechanisms that underline this decline. And we talk about a combined effects of stressors that combine environmental stressors like pesticides, like lack of flowers, but also pathogens and pests that come from invasion. And also an issue with vitality or genetics. So this is a case on the top here you have for honeybees, and more recently we have a similar review suggesting also combination of factors for the diversity of wild bees. So a lot of research try to understand why we have a declining population of bees. And more recently, we also have this phenomenon or this competition that enter in the game as the stressors for bees. So I mean, why we were talking about competition between managed honeybees and wild bees is that because of the pressures on beekeepers with pesticide exposure, lack of flowers, more and more beekeepers want to escape agricultural landscape and put closer to protected areas their beehives. So they move the beehives closer to the protected areas, and this could affect the diversity of wild bees due to competition to food resources. And I can show you here one very punchy punchline that was published in 2018. That for me was a kind of an asking to work on wild-living honeybees. So here you can see that's based on this concept of competition. The title is that conserving honeybees doesn't help wildlife. So it's very punchy, but the idea behind is that moving managed colonies, so beehive in natural areas, will compete with wild pollinators. But the title is, for me, the perfect shortcut or dangerous shortcut for definitions. So here we have honeybees that alarm wildlife. So one missing point was that honeybees could also have a wild living phase, but it was missing in this paper. So this was the start of the story why working on wild living honeybees. And so we did a kind of answer to this manuscript with a more conceptual approach, and to show that okay, Apis mellifera has a double nature with a managed phase and a wild living phase. And we know a lot, we work a lot on beehive managed by beekeepers to assess pesticide exposure, to assess how they behave or are disturbed by parasites and lack of flowers. But we know very well about wild living colonies and in natural condition how the species is disturbed or survive and behave. But the important point was, okay, this double nature was absent, and is very critical to show that Apis mellifera is still living in the wild. Oh, sorry. And so we also did a kind of synthesis of the third, so the concerns we have with wild living honeybees. They are, of course, facing a lot of pressures that are very similar to the pressures I mentioned before on diversity of wild bees, with agriculture intensification, also deforestation, and also this kind of genetic pressure with managed livestock and climate change. Okay, so at the end of this review or this synthesis, one question was always, okay, but are there present these wild living colonies? So what we did a kind of a prediction modeling, and we calculated the number of wild living colonies that we should be able to observe in European forests. So this was based on field data carried out by former researchers, like other researchers like Patrick Benjamin, but also others. And we extrapolated these results, and the main number was that we should be able to observe at least 80,000 wild living honeybee colonies in European forests. Here you have a map where this wild living population should be easily observable, and not easily. It's always a hope. It's always a challenge. But you have a kind of hotspot where in Europe we should be able to observe this population. So this was kind of predictions based on modeling. But now, and after all this literature synthesis, now we are carrying out a survey. So in France, because I'm based in France now. So here you have a map with the 5 points, not 4, but now 5. It's recent, but we have now 5 points, regions where we do a monitoring, and we hope it will be a long-term monitoring of these wild living colonies. So what we do, you can see in the map one of these points, and so we select a forest large enough to be able to have a population of wild living colonies, and in each of these black dots we do beelining, so the pictures below, to track and to found wild living colonies. So this is hard work that we started in 2020, and now we have some preliminary results that are encouraging. So here I show you one of this region, the same than the map before. And so we have in this region we observed 20 wild living colonies living in trees, and we also predicted 4 other colonies that we did not found. So the orange circle. So this is quite interesting that in this region we have potentially 24 colonies living in 1 year. We also did observation over several years, and we observed that the survival rate was about 60%, which is high. So this was for the first year. So we have now waiting for the second winter. Let's see what will happen. But the preliminary results suggest that this population in this area is
you have 1 minute.
probably sustainable. Yeah. So we are looking on the second year to confirm this point. And you can also see P charts. We also do some molecular analysis to see the genetics origin of these colonies. So this is still ongoing. So we don't have here all of the results, but you can see that we have a dominancy of red color, means that the local dominance. So all are hybridized, of course, and we expected that with different colors, but a dominancy of the M lineage was interesting to see, but it's still on process. So yes, it's finished for me. I am on time. I hope.
Super. Thank you, Fabrice. The one thing that stood out for me is 80,000 wild colonies in Europe. If we should be so lucky, I think we've got something like 1,000 identified so far. So we've got our work cut out for the next 20 years.